And here we go once again on the Suppress Herald podcast. It is Monday, the 17th of November. And per usual, we've got the propaganda machine fully out in force at the Suppress Herald and beyond. And we're going to keep it simple tonight and really delve into just two stories. And this is what propaganda really is, if you really look at what's happening. And this is, if you're paying any attention at all to news across the spectrum, one of the big things that's out is we're back to the Epstein files. Epstein files, Trump, trying to pin something on Trump and tie him to Epstein once again. And if you have any doubt that there's an operation to try and ruin Trump, that is just the standard operating procedure for the propaganda machine in this country and across the globe. This story just demonstrates it very, very clearly. There is no question that we've already dealt with this. Let's just start from the beginning here. And, some pictures popped up with Trump and Epstein in New York, two wealthy people in New York, very influential people at, big events, and invariably they were going to run into each other. They did know each other, and Trump even had Epstein at Mar-a-Lago. But then let's jump ahead to very thoroughly, we've looked at this. This has been already tried before. And the real story comes out that Trump kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago because he was a creep. And it's come to light that he was basically poaching his staff, particularly young girls, from Mar-a-Lago. And this has been, talked about. And Trump was pissed about it, but he also didn't like the way Epstein was coming on to these young girls and thought it was creepy and didn't like the guy. And what's really interesting is we're seeing as they release these files and these emails from Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell and others, he didn't like Trump. He really didn't like him. Probably because Trump kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. So, you know, let's remember if there was actually anything there, Biden had all those emails and access to it all. And it goes all the way back. All these people that wanted to ruin Trump, if there was anything, it would have been brought out. So, regardless, they still won't give up. It's just amazing. And here we have, now remember, this started to come out in mainstream media, New York Times, Washington Compost, typically. But here's the big one. Epstein email says Trump knew about the girls as White House decrees its release by lawmakers. That's the headline. Remember that. Epstein email says Trump knew about the girls. I just told you he knew about the girls. He knew that Epstein was poaching the girls, and he was pissed about it. And this is at that same time when he kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago. So they're saying that this is a revelation that Trump, an Epstein email says that Trump knew about the girls. We've known Trump knew about the girls. He came out and said it, that he knew about the girls. He knew that they were being poached and that Epstein was a creep with the girls at Mar-a-Lago, and he kicked them out of there. Doesn't mean he knew any more than that. Let me tell you honestly, Donald Trump, you can call him whatever you want, womanizer, beautiful women. He's been married and divorced. He's on his third marriage, so not an angel, not a saint. But let me tell you something. He coveted beautiful, glamorous women. There is no history whatsoever with Trump and little girls or young girls. None. You can't find any. Biden, on the other hand, used to sniff their hair, little girls. We know that good old Billy boy, Bill Clinton, was on Epstein's plane to the island, got a picture of him in a dress and high heels. No question, Billy boy was into young girls because we already have seen absolute evidence of that. Completely different people. And I can tell you honestly, Trump probably couldn't even grasp a grown man like Epstein as a pedophile. Probably made him sick to even think about it, so he probably didn't. Regardless, been there, done that. There's no story here, but they keep bringing it back. They just got their asses kicked in the shutdown. I don't care what you want to say. The mainstream media and the propaganda machine did their absolute best to try and paint it as the Democrats on this royal mission to save healthcare or some other crap. They got their ass kicked and their asses handed to them. And it's going to hurt them. So here comes the Epstein files again. What's interesting about this article in the Suppress Herald, and this is from the Associated Press, so this isn't anything they did. They just reprint, this is what propaganda is. You see a story in one place, it's maybe a marginal story. You see it in multiple places. You say a lie enough times, people think it's true. And that's what this is about. Pure, unadulterated propaganda. What's really interesting about this article, though, if you are a little bit critical and bother to read down into it, is they actually, if you look at the headline, Epstein email says Trump knew about the girls. That's the, in italics, that's the big story. But right down in here, there's a subheadline. Giffrey said Trump couldn't have been friendlier. Okay. Now they, in these released documents, blacked out somebody's name that had spent some time at Epstein's place with Trump. And here it is, Giffrey. The Democrats blocked it out because this doesn't add up. It's that simple. They knew it doesn't add up. You can't say that Trump was at Epstein's place and this woman Giffrey was there, this young girl, and then find out that in her book she actually published before she committed suicide said that Trump couldn't have been friendlier and that there was nothing to see. She never saw him do anything but be a gentleman. So Trump knew about the girls. If he knew about the girls, why would he just be a gentleman with this girl? And Republicans say emails released to tarnish Trump. Well, that's exactly all it is. And then in here, a little further on, in July, Trump said he had banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago because his one-time friend was taking people who worked for me, including Giffrey. The women, he said, were taken out of the spa, hired by him. In other words, gone. It says right here, the women, the title. Trump knew about the girls, knew about the women. I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people, Trump told reporters. Asked if Giffrey was one of the employees poached by Epstein, the president demurred, but then said Epstein stole her. It's right there. They just debunked their own headline, but they still printed it. And the reason they printed it is for the headline, because so many people don't bother to read the story that debunks the headline. It's complete bogus garbage. And this has been flying around, and all you hear about are the headlines. Trump's trying not to get the Epstein files released and trying to cover it up and all the rest of it. It's unbelievable to me that they would even print that, a story that they debunked right in the body of the story. Trump knew about the girls, but there was nothing to see here. That's basically the summation. That's the cliff notes of that article, which means you shouldn't have even printed it because it's nothing but propaganda. Then we have this other one, which is really kind of interesting. Another story that's been around. Top BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation, bosses resign after criticism of broadcasters' editing of a Trump speech. Criticism of broadcasters' editing. This is another Associated Press piece. So the head of the BBC and the British broadcaster's top news executive both resigned after it was exposed that they edited on a documentary by the BBC what Trump said, and I was there, just an FYI, on the ellipse at the Capitol on January 6, 2021, when Trump said we need to speak out and we need to go and let them know peacefully. Well, they doctored that and they put it together to make it seem like Trump said, go attack the Capitol. They did that knowingly. You cannot tell me that the editors didn't know exactly what they were doing. Exactly what they were doing. Or if they didn't know exactly what they were doing, which is portraying what Trump said as completely different than what he actually said with an agenda, then they should have been fired anyway because they're idiots. But they weren't idiots. The BBC is a known liberal bastion paid for BBC by taxes, in effect, a special tax from every person in England to cover the cost of, much like our nonprofit organizations that were just defunded because they are liberal outlets, one sided propaganda machines, part of the machine. That's the BBC. So they quit because that was garbage. And Trump is threatening to sue them for billions of dollars. So that's in the Suppress Herald. But we're not going to quit there. This is the best of all. In the Suppress Herald, another article. And this is what you really have to understand. This is the most important look, and it's right there in the same supposed newspaper. In Trump-dominated media world, editing video takes on new significance as BBC uproar shows. Let me read that again. In Trump-dominated media world, Trump doesn't dominate the media. Trump's calling them out for their lies. He's not dominating them, he's exposing them. In Trump exposed media world should be the title. Editing video takes on new significance. In other words, they're saying that the job of videotape editors was once one of the least noticed in the media world. What they're trying, this whole article is trying to say that this was just an innocent mistake by the editors. They didn't do this on purpose. This wasn't propaganda. It was just, oh, we just took two clips and kind of put them together just to save time, kind of a summary thing. Oh, we didn't mean that. That's what this is. And this whole article tries to make, in the space of a few months, a journalistic skill that might seem straightforward to many viewers editing tape for broadcast has been behind a $16 million legal settlement, which is Trump settling with CBS for editing Kamala Harris's words to make her say on the actual 60 Minutes show completely different than what she actually said, which was a word salad to make her sound like a complete idiot. So they cleaned it up and then put it out there. That is a form of propaganda. And in this case, during an election season, during a campaign, that was a contribution in kind to the Kamala Harris campaign. So they paid 16 million in a legal settlement. And then they go on. A network's change in how it offers interviews on a news show, and now the resignation of two top leaders at the BBC. The other common denominator, President Donald Trump. He's the bad guy. He's ruining the media. And, these poor guys just made a little mistake. Britain's BBC is reeling this week following the resignations of its Director General, Tim Davie, and News Chief, Deborah Turnus, amid accusations of bias. Accusations of bias? Proof of bias in the editing of last year's documentary. So, Trump sued CBS parent company over 60 Minutes edit of Kamala Harris interview, resulting in this summer settlement, and the complaints of his Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, about her Face the Nation interview in August caused a policy change. Yeah, what it caused is they can't edit the people from the Trump administration can't have their answers to questions edited because they edit it to make her look bad and Trump look bad. Now, this is the best part. In a different time, the BBC episode would likely have led to a quick admission of a mistake, a correction, apology, and everyone would move on. Yeah, I think good old Rush Limbaugh termed this the drive-by media. They drive by, they blow it up, and then they move on. And that's what the old media used to be, the drive-by media. That's exactly what this is describing. In a different time, they would have admitted their mistake, moved on, and then do it to the next guy. But now, Trump and his administration aren't letting them do that anymore. But in an era where every editing decision is taken in a newsroom is now under a microscope and can be weaponized for political purposes, it's got to be something that is causing real caution in newsrooms all over the world now. Good. In an era where every editing decision taken in a newsroom is under a microscope, how about every editing decision is supposed to be about truth, not manipulating things and lying to the world and to people of the country? How about that? This is insane, but this is them trying to defend the indefensible. It is really unbelievable. And this goes on. Quotes artificially compressed in BBC documentary. In the BBC edit, different parts of Trump's 2021 Capitol speech are edited to appear as a single quote. We're going to walk down to the Capitol and I'll be there with you. And we fight. We fight like hell. That's not what it was. We're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to do it peacefully, he said. But they left that out. This is we're just compressing this. It was just a simple mistake. No, it was edited to fit a narrative to try to go after Trump and to continue this lie of the entire January 6th scam, which was concocted for the simple purpose of taking the heat off the stolen 2020 election. They were looking at what the hell happened there. How did Biden get 10 million more votes than Obama? Nobody can answer that. So I'm not going to go into the rest of it, but it goes on. A new way to protect against complaints. This is just absolute BS. This is them trying to cover up for what has been going on for decades. The liberal media machine, propaganda, and lying to the American people. And you know what? It's about time we had a president that stood up and said, nope, you're not going to do that. Because let me tell you, George Bush went through his presidency. George H.W. lost re-election because he wouldn't stand up when they lied about him. And George W., he managed to get reelected, but we got Obama because of what he did, and mostly didn't do, which is call out the media for their lies, their manipulation, their propaganda. He just turned the other cheek, smiled, and let them get away with absolutely destroying conservatism, conservatives, the Republican Party, and we got Obama. So that's the reality. Trump isn't taking it. He hasn't from the beginning. He points at them. He says, the red light's back there. They're liars. The fake media, fake news media, fake news. He's been calling them out since day one, and they can't take it. And here they are, still trying to use this propaganda. It's caught out with editing and making Trump look like he told everybody to go fight, 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 and attack the Capitol. It's not what he said, never did. This is the lie they've been perpetrating since that January 6th day. Everything that happened there has been a lie to most Americans, except those that were there and saw it, which I was. And I can tell you what you've seen and heard on the mainstream news media was not what happened that day. And it is slowly starting to come out. Now we hear maybe they found out who the bomber was, the pipe bomber. I'm not going to get into that because that's all starting to percolate up, and we'll see. But just these two stories in the Suppress Herald, our local paper owned by mega, oligarchs, George Soros, Alex Soros' son more so, Claude Omidyar, Bill Gates, own the National Distrust for Local News that bought the Maine newspapers, almost all the papers in Maine. It's now called the Maine Distrust for Local News. And they keep it afloat and they keep it going because it's part of the whole machine, the propaganda machine that exists from local all the way up to national and international news. And they repeat each other. These lies that I'm sharing today are in the Suppress Herald, the local newspaper. Older people that get their paper every day, they read this and they just read the headlines, and that's what their news is. And then they see it on CNN. And so it's like, well, same story, must be true. That's propaganda. It's all lies. And in these two cases, the Epstein files and this whole BBC thing with editing tape on a documentary to make Trump look bad, Trump doesn't take it anymore. And you shouldn't either. And I will hope when you see this, you'll share this podcast, you'll share the Suppress Herald, let people look in and see and like, follow, all those things. Especially share with friends, family that would be interested in really understanding a little bit more about how propaganda works. Because that's what this podcast is really about. You can get all you want about the New York Times and everything else, but when you start looking at it and it's on your local newspaper that comes to the mailbox of hundreds, thousands of people across Maine, and they pick it up and they read the paper and this stuff's in there, this is what is passing as news for a lot of people. And it's all, as I've laid out today very, very plainly, it's all lies It's all propaganda. It doesn't hold up to scrutiny, but they just keep at it. It's endless. Last thing I want to mention today, very quickly, is they haven't given up on climate change. So this was in the Suppress Herald as well. Climate leaders are talking about overshoot into warming danger zone. Here's what it means. Here's just a bunch of garbage. People aren't afraid enough. We have to tell them that they've still got to be afraid, and we still have to do the Green New Deal, and we still have to punt money into the people that are scamming the hell out of us. And here in Maine, we've got to keep paying ridiculous electric prices and gas prices and for energy because climate change. So now they're saying, well, people are giving up on climate change, and now we're going to overshoot the 1.5 degrees change, 1.5 degrees Celsius, and the whole world's going to burst into flames, and we're all going to die. It's being debunked as well. Bill Gates just came out and blew it all up, saying climate change, global warming is not an existential threat. It's not the end of humanity. We have to worry about poverty and starvation, focus on food and about people's standard of living. Well, that's energy is at the bottom of that. But this is just they have to keep it going. Of course, COP, the climate, climate deny or climate alarmists are all gathered in Brazil this week. And so all these articles are popping up to support that whole narrative. Again, we're talking propaganda. The big climate gathering with good old Newsom from California going down and schmoozing around with all the people and saying climate change is existential threat. Meanwhile, his state is burning down. It's going to hell in a handbasket. You can't afford to live there anymore. Places are polluted. The cities are dumps for open septic and open sewers, basically. People crapping in the streets. Third world looking California. And he's down in Brazil talking about handling climate change. Maybe he should have filled the reservoirs so that you didn't have half of the city of LA burn. How much carbon went into the atmosphere when 7,000 buildings and everything in between, all the trees, grass, everything else all burned, and smoke and everything else. Insanity is what it is. And they're losing. Look for more and more alarmism as we move forward, because when you start to lose, you have to get more shrill. And it's kind of like children. They'll start screaming. It's too bad reality's starting to kick in and people are starting to figure out what they're saying and what they've been doing is all about the money and making people filthy rich. I'll once again say carbon trading. So that's the Suppress Herald in a nutshell this week. And global warming, because you've got a big climate summit down in Brazil, and you've got the Epstein files because that's all they got, because they just got their asses handed to them with the whole shutdown thing. And then, last but not least, is the whole BBC thing has blown up on them. And once again, chinks in the armor of the propaganda machine are falling away. The BBC, public radio, PBS, public broadcasting system, defunded. They're having the propaganda machine dismantled. And now you've got podcasters like this podcast and many others, and you've got alternative sources. You've got the Robinson Report and the Maine Wire here in Maine, online sources that do actual, real journalism, finding about real problems in Maine. And you've got this happening across the country. They're losing their grip because they're losing their propaganda machine. And the more we expose it, the better. So I've gone on today, a little long, but just those three stories demonstrate unequivocally what the impact of propaganda can look like and how just absolutely desperate they're starting to be. So, with that, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I hope you will share it far and wide, and we will see you for the next one.